Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by CJ Vogel, a key Longhorn returning for the Sam Houston game, and a lot of talk about confidence on Steve Sarkisian's pregame Zoom call on Thursday, and we will break it down here on this edition of On Texas Football, which is brought to you by our friends at Hayes City Store, one of my favorite places in the greater Austin area, because there's a very few restaurants that when you go to them once, you just know right away that it's a special place, and Hayes City Store is one of those places. They've got scratch-made Texas comfort food, from their famous truck stop enchiladas to the award-winning chicken fried steak to the homemade desserts. All of it is delicious, and again, it's made from scratch. Live music 6 nights a week. They've got 50 beer taps, ice cold long necks, and tasty margaritas. They've got 11 TVs in their ice house. That is a perfect setup for your game day, whether it's Saturday or Sunday. And if you're out there on Sunday, try that Sunday brunch from 10 to 3. Hayes City Store is dog friendly. They've got a tree net for the kids, plenty of space to run around. So gather up your whole crew, get them out to Driftwood at Hayes City Store. For more information, check out the website at hayescitystortx.com. Hayes City Store, it's uniquely Texas. CJ, hopefully everybody that watches the game on Saturday gets a little bit of a different view than what the Longhorn fans have gotten the last couple of weeks, especially that UTEP game. Cleanse the palate, hopefully, and maybe we get Arch Manning back on track, CJ, with Sark's injury update on DeAndre Moore from Thursday.
Yeah, DeAndre Moore, welcome back to the rotation. Sark said that he should be a go. He is expected to be back out on the field for the Longhorns, and that's big, Jeff, because, again, Texas, with its wide receiving core right now, well, it's not very deep and it's not very experienced. Sark talked about not just his on-field impact, but how much he will be a factor on the sideline, in the huddle, aligning guys, making sure that the play is correct. Sark said, quote, he brings the juice. So, I think offensively, that's what you're missing a lot of. So hopefully DeAndre Moore back on the field Saturday against Sam Houston State will be quite the return of the juice for the Texas offense and for Arch Manning specifically.
CJ, a couple more injury updates. Trey Wisner doubtful for the game on Saturday. You've been reporting throughout the week DeAndre Moore has practiced. Trey Wisner has not. No update on Cole Hudson, but CJ, you reported something interesting. Connor Robertson has gotten some of the snaps as the first team center. We'll see how that works out. And then with the running backs with Wisner out, you've also reported, CJ, James Simon, we could see a lot of number 31 on the field on Saturday. What do you think this, after hearing Sark and knowing what sources have said throughout the week, CJ, what do you think this offense is going to look like on Saturday, just from a personnel standpoint?
Yeah, from a personnel standpoint, I think it's going to be interesting. Hopefully, again, that core of Livingston, Wingo, and Moore is there. Add in a tight end, Jack injuries, obviously. But running back's going to be really interesting because you're without CJ Baxter, obviously. Sark also mentioned today, like you said, Jeff, very likely that Trey Wisner does not go to give him that 2 more full weeks of additional recovery. So that leaves you with 3 very young, inexperienced running backs. And right now, it should come as no surprise for Texas fans or the 2 of us, really, to see James Simon trot out there as the first back on Saturday. And, that's pretty significant given that his first, real game time came just a week ago. And I think we all left that game against UTEP saying, oh, pretty impressive stuff. He's got some juice to go back to what we were talking about DeAndre Moore with. But I think James Simon right now, based off what I'm hearing behind the scenes, is going to be that first back out on the field on Saturday, giving Trey Wisner and CJ Baxter that extended time to recover and get ready for SEC play.
CJ, Sark talked about the week of practice Arch has had, and I know a lot of people listening to this, watching it, don't want to hear that, but I felt like Sark today in the Zoom call, he wasn't answering our questions. It felt like he was talking to the team when he talked about confidence, praised guys for how hard they practiced, for the strides they made. Again, Sark continues to be really positive publicly, and I think that's kind of what he wants to do right now. That's his message. That's got to be his message internally too, CJ. It's, hey, I haven't lost faith in you. I'm behind you guys. I believe in you guys. Just relax, be loose, go play good football. And I noticed you were tracking it too during the Zoom call. Sark wants the offense to kind of look at the defense and how they're doing things and where they can be if they just get a few things to go right here.
Yeah, I look back to what Rod Babers used to tell us on Longhorn live streams pretty often, Jeff. You need a celebration, right? You got to have that swagger that you play with. When you step on the field, you know that you're the best player, right? And a lot of these guys in high school, they were far and away the best player. And that's partially what got them to where they are today. For Arch and that offense, I think they've lost a little bit of that. So to come back out and play with that intensity, that swagger, that confidence. That's something that I think is certainly missing, obviously, with the way that the offense has played through 3 weeks. Now you look at that defensive side of the ball saying, oh, we know when we step foot on the field, opposing offenses, Jeff, are not going to score on this defense. And they know that. They play like that. They play loose. They play free. They play confidently. If that can trickle over after a strong showing this weekend for the Texas offense, that would go a long way. But it's not just Arch, and I feel like a broken record saying this exact thing, but translating what you see in practice to the field is objective number one for Sarkisian. Because Texas in practice sees a very different Arch Manning, and that was mentioned today by Sark. I was actually a little bit surprised by his answer saying, yeah, it's not night and day almost, but it's very close, right? It's a different version of Arch Manning in practice versus what we see on the field. And the job of a coach here is to bridge that, to make sure that you get as close to that top talent, top tier quarterback that you see on the practice field on Saturdays. So we'll see about that for Arch Manning, obviously. But right now, another strong week of practice, Jeff. And I wanted to get your thoughts because there's another player on that defensive side of the ball who Sark said has been practicing his ass off, to quote him this week. That's Colin Simmons, and half a sack a week ago. But it sounds like Sark is looking to see a little bit more and is expecting a little bit more this weekend coming up.
Yeah, and it's a little bit easier overall when you're getting the results you're getting on defense. Like you said, this is one of the best defenses in the country. It's elite. And the pass rush, it hasn't been terrible by any stretch, but they've left some stuff on the field. You know, so the further removed, CJ, we get from that San Jose State game, Sark mentioned it. He's mentioned it a couple of times this week again that, hey, we probably had 3 sacks in the San Jose State game that we left on the field just by not doing what you've been coached to do. Just maintain your rush lane integrity, be disciplined on your rush. You know, when you start looking at it, and I've got some of the Pro Football Focus numbers in front of me. If Sam Houston State, Pro Football Focus ranks every FBS offensive line in pass blocking efficiency. There's 136 of them. Sam Houston State's tied for 108th right now. They've allowed 33 pressures. Only 9 FBS offensive lines have allowed more. CJ, you start looking at Texas, you know, middle of the pack. They're, I think, tied for 7th most pressures in the SEC with Texas A&M. They're tied for the 8th most sacks in the conference with Missouri. So kind of a middle of the road SEC pass rush, but skewing the numbers too is the Ohio State game where Julian Saint only dropped back to throw the football 20 times. You did pressure him 5 times. It was actually a really good pressure to drop back rate, but you didn't get those opportunities when you got pressure. He was getting the ball out and you weren't able to get home. So they've actually done a pretty good job of getting to the quarterback the last 2 weeks. It's just now, can the pressure get home and can you get the quarterback on the ground? I do think, though, that when you look at how many times, you know, both Sam Houston quarterbacks, roughly a third plus of their dropbacks, they've been pressured this year. I know Mabry Matoyer has, I think it's a 33% pressure to sack rate. So, it's a really good week, CJ, for the pass rush to get right.
Yeah, a bit of a statue is how I would describe the quarterback play of maybe Matoyer back there for Sam Houston State. But I think this week is big for Texas, again, to get that confidence. And what's interesting is, you know, we sit here and we talk about this pass rush, Texas having as much talent as anybody in the country. Fans hear that and they expect to see sacks. Well, you know who else hears that and game plans against it? Opposing coordinators, opposing offensive line coaches, opposing quarterbacks, right? They know that this pass rush is very talented. It's very lethal. And if they come in with a game plan to just allow their quarterback to drop back and sit all day in the pocket, they know that things are not going to go their way. So I look back not just at Ohio State, who didn't drop back very often, but a week ago against UTEP, where Malachi Nelson was getting the ball out at 1.8 seconds per drop back. You know, that's very quick. You can't get to the quarterback. I asked Ethan Burke on Monday, you know, does it get frustrating? He said, no, not really. We just got to find different ways to, you know, affect the throw. And whether that's hands in passing lanes, whether that's, you know, bluffing a stunt and making sure that you're ready for a quick drop back or a quick screen or a quick jailbreak. You know, that's ways that these, you know, Texas edge rushers are really preparing to make impacts if they're not getting home for the sack.
Yeah, it's interesting too, CJ. I always talk about, hey, you got to earn the right to rush the passer. Texas defense has been great about getting teams into third downs and third longs. It's just they're getting rid of the ball. They'd rather just take the incompletion and punt rather than risk the negative play. So, yeah, a little bit of adjustment needed from Texas on that. But, CJ, I want to, as we start to wrap this up, I want to get to something Sark said. He was asked specifically, hey, other than the win, obviously, what do you want to see on Saturday? What does the head coach want to see on Saturday? And he said he wants to get Texas back to playing its brand of football that under his watch, he's grown accustomed to Texas playing, CJ, which is fast, physical, smart, and tough. And I think when you look at those four things, when you start to look at the inconsistencies of this team through the first three games, especially on offense, that's where a lot of that comes into play, because the offense hasn't played very fast. At times they haven't been very physical. And really in all three phases, you haven't played smart football, because the penalties, if you just get back, I know it sounds really rudimentary, but if you just get back to those four core principles, you've got a chance to be a pretty good football team.
Yeah, again, the talent is there. Now it's about in between the ears, Jeff. We talk about the smart level of football. Texas has to clean up the penalties, but fast is an interesting one, because there's two meanings to fast, right? It's the literal on the field. Are they running quick? Is speed evident? And I think for right now, Texas has shown that in instances, right? But then again, you look back at that offensive side of the ball and you say, how fast can Texas go between snaps? Because I start to wonder, is an up-tempo, upbeat Arch Manning the best version of himself when he can kind of run and gun, really not think a whole lot about what's about to happen, and you let that play clock run down to 5-10 seconds, that's a lot to process when you are aligning under center, you diagnosing the defensive front, etc. I'm starting to wonder if going super up-tempo and, trying to get a snap every 15 or 20 seconds would be beneficial for a quarterback who doesn't need to sit there and think a whole lot. Mm-hmm. And I look back at, one of my favorite lessons as a guy that was trying to learn how to play golf, Jeff, is, you get up to the tee box, don't think, just hit. Get up there. You don't need a practice swing. Just get up to the tee box, make sure your feet are right, and swing away. Because the more you sit there and kind of stew over what's about to happen, the more likely you're about to mess up in a backswing, or you're about to think a little bit too much and you're going to get off center or whatever. You understand what I'm saying here. Oh, yeah. I wonder if that's the case for Arch. Just go up tempo, go a little bit faster. So I like what Sark's saying with those adjectives and the descriptions of what he hopes to see. And I hope that's what we see on Saturday. But I wonder if fast could have a double entendre meeting there for the offense as well.
I think it's got multiple meanings, because when you look at the defense too, like, you want to get to the point in football where you're reacting instead of thinking. If you're thinking, you're going to be a half step behind, especially once you get in an SEC play, any power conference. If you're thinking instead of reacting, you're going to be behind. And you look at the way the Texas defense has played, CJ, there's not a lot of thinking going on that side of the ball. There's just reacting and doing. And I think for Arch, and I think for the offensive line too, because there are times where you may see an offensive lineman kind of 7 yards off the ball, standing around, not blocking it, and be like, oh man, that guy got beat. Well, no, it's because on the fly, he's thinking too much. And then all of a sudden, the guy that he's supposed to be blocking is behind him because he never got picked up and he's making a play in your backfield. So I think for the offense as a whole, the more you can streamline that process, I'm with you. I wonder if we do see maybe more tempo, because the more you can streamline that process to where guys are forced to react and not think, maybe it's going to be better for this offense. But CJ, as we close it out, Sark covered a lot of ground today. He even talked about, the transfer portal. He was asked about, hey, why haven't you guys taken an offensive lineman out of the portal? And it's a lot of the stuff we talked about here on the channel. They've invested heavily in a high school offensive line recruiting. They felt like the development was there, and they haven't had a ton of attrition. So there was really no room for them to take an offensive lineman. And Sark also talked about, hey, guys see the numbers we've got, and they might not want to come here thinking it's going to be really hard to start. But whether it's that, CJ, or something else, anything as we close this out that we haven't covered that's real top of mind for you from this Zoom call?
Yeah, I think, again, you look at these running backs, and it's a big opportunity for them. Texas, without its one and its two at the running back position this weekend. We've talked about James Simon perhaps having that first touch, that first series as a starter for the Longhorns this upcoming weekend. If that's the case, does he take the job and quite literally never look back? Does he run away with it, right? I'm interested to see that. But on top of that, Sark said that there's been growth with all three, whether it be in the passing game, whether it be with ball security. When Texas ran the ball 50-plus times last week and did not put the ball on the ground once, that's encouraging. That's the week-by-week progression that he said he hoped to see and is now seeing it carry on into the next week. So the running backs are really where I'm starting to look and say, okay, where else can they really start to become game changers for this offense? On top of that, Sark said that there were a number of offensive linemen that he hopes to get some sort of look at this weekend as well. That's Nate Kibble, That's Nick Brooks, and that's Daniel Cruz. We'll see, of course, whether or not that ultimately changes the starting five. My guess, given what we've seen through the first 3 weeks, is probably not, but I want to see what they can do, and I'm sure many Texas fans want to see what they can do as well.
I'll back you up, CJ, on the talk about the running backs. I'm not saying he's going to be either one of these guys, but you look at the career arcs for Deontay Foreman and Bijan Robinson. When you say, hey, you can't lose your job to injury, ask Chris Warren III and Keontae Ingram if you can lose your job to injury, because those guys did. Once they left the lineup, the two guys I mentioned, Deontay Foreman went on to have a 2,000-yard season, and Bijan took the starting running back job and never gave it up until he left the NFL and was a first-round draft pick. So you may be on to something with James Simon. As a wise man once told me, you can't help the club if you're always in the tub. So if Simon's healthy and productive, CJ, maybe he's the guy at running back for this team, but we shall see. Looking forward to seeing James Simon on Saturday, and hopefully we get to see some of those young offensive linemen as well. Hey, real quick, I know he's everybody's a fan of him on the channel. There was a word from Sark about Jonah Williams. They like to get Jonah on the field. So all the Jonah Williams fans out there have been waiting for Jonah to play. Maybe Saturday's the day where we see some Jonah Williams, CJ.
Yeah, fingers crossed, because, again, he's kind of fallen in that Emmett Mosley realm of where is he? What can he do? Can he even suit up? Hopefully this weekend solves a lot of those questions.
No doubt. All right, CJ, thanks for the knowledge and expertise as always. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for producing it. Thank you to Hayes City Store for sponsoring it. Thanks to the entire On Texas Football staff. If you're not a member over at ontexasfootball.com, get over to the site right now. Sign up using the promo code OTFOG. That'll get you 1 year of access at ontexasfootball.com for $39.95. Make sure you like this video and that you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. That way, whether it's here on the channel or over on the site, you're not missing anything before, during, and after every Texas game of the 2025 season. For CJ, for Matthew, for the On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and until next time, hook 'em.
Hook 'em.